Did you know that like nearly 70% of adults say they felt envious of other people's perfect lives on social media? It can be a really destructive emotion, and today we're going to explore just how destructive.
Yeah, it's fascinating how social media lets us present these idealized versions of ourselves, you know?
Hmm.
But crafting that online persona can really disconnect us from real life.
Exactly right. And today we're diving deep into the tragic case of Ali Abulaban, the TikTok star, better known as Jin Kid. We're going to try to understand what led him to murder his wife Anna and her friend Rayvern. And to do that, we've got court documents, police reports, and even audio recordings that Ali himself captured.
Yeah, these recordings give us a raw glimpse into their relationship beyond, that curated world of TikTok. What makes this case so interesting is the contrast between his online persona and the really troubled reality that was happening offline.
Yeah. Okay, so to understand this tragedy, let's start at the beginning. We know Ali's childhood was pretty difficult. He often talked about feeling like an outsider. He
Yeah.
struggled to fit in as a Muslim American, and he also had pretty bad social anxiety.
Yeah, and he actually found comfort in humor and impressions. It was how he coped. It was how he connected with people and gained acceptance. And we see this a lot, right? Humor, it disarms people, it creates a sense of belonging. And this continued when he joined the Air Force. For Ali, that was a way to escape his dad's control and make his own way. And that's where he met Anna.
Yeah. Now, Anna was super outgoing and popular. People said she was drawn to Ali's big personality. But even early on, there were some red flags.
Right. And this is important when we talk about relationships. We're often attracted to traits that seem appealing on the surface, but can actually mask some deeper issues. In Ali's case, his possessive behavior was already showing. He was actually discharged from the Air Force because he allegedly assaulted one of Anna's friends. That's a huge red flag. It shows that his need for control could turn violent.
Absolutely. And as their lives got more and more tied up with social media, things took a dark turn. Ali developed this online persona, Jin Kid, and he got pretty famous on TikTok. It was almost like this persona was consuming him, blurring the lines between online and offline. I mean, he wanted everyone to call him Jin Kid, even friends and family.
It's crucial to consider the impact of social media fame. There's constant pressure to maintain a certain image. You get validation from likes and followers, and the lines between your public and private self get blurred. And this can be really damaging, especially for someone who already struggles with insecurity and control issues.
Yeah, and in Ali's case, we see this playing out in his relationship with Anna. As she started to gain her own following, his jealousy just exploded. There's a lot of drinking and drugs, partying, and his behavior got really erratic, both online and offline. We have access to some of the recordings of their fights, and they are rough. Like, the voicemails are just filled with rage and accusations.
It's important to remember these recordings are evidence of the abuse that Anna was going through. They go way beyond the curated social media posts and show us the brutal reality of their relationship.
Yeah. Let's hear a little bit of one of these recordings to give you an idea of what Anna was dealing with.
Just remember, this is just a glimpse of the kind of verbal abuse she endured.
Wow. The constant accusations, the suspicion, it's just heartbreaking. And it only got worse. Anna finally decided to leave for her own safety.
Yeah, it's important to understand Anna was escaping an abusive relationship. She left Ali and moved into their apartment in San Diego with their daughter. She was looking for a safe space away from his controlling behavior.
Right. But Ali just couldn't accept it. He was convinced that she was cheating on him even while he was desperately trying to win her back. His jealousy and need for control were just overwhelming.
This is a perfect example of that distorted perception fueled by possessiveness and jealousy. Ali was so focused on his own suspicions that he completely missed the reality. Anna was trying to protect herself.
And this is where we get to maybe the most chilling detail of this whole story. The Discord app. Ali secretly installed Discord on his daughter's iPad and basically turned it into a live microphone.
Yeah, this is where the case gets really scary. He created a voice channel and could hear anything happening in the apartment. It just shows how technology can be used for manipulation and abuse.
It's a huge invasion of privacy. The level of obsession is terrifying. Anna had no clue she was being monitored. She thought she was finally free from his scrutiny, but Ali was listening to her every move.
Yeah, and this act of surveillance sets the stage for the tragedy that's about to unfold.
So Ali is listening to everything going on in that apartment through the Discord app, and one day Anna calls a friend named Rayburn to come over and help her clean up.
And this is really important when we talk about abusive relationships, that jealousy and possessiveness can totally distort someone's reality.
Yeah.
Ali was so consumed by his suspicions that any interaction Anna had with a man, even just a friend, was seen as a threat.
And of course, Ali is listening to their whole conversation through the iPad. His paranoia is just spinning out of control.
And we actually have the recordings from that day, and they are really disturbing.
Yeah.
You can hear Ollie's anger growing as he listens to Anna and Rayburn talking and laughing in the apartment.
Wow.
He'd been using cocaine, and mixed with his warped perception, he becomes convinced that they are having an affair. He gets in his car and drives over 90 miles an hour back to the apartment.
It's just terrifying how fast things can escalate when someone is consumed by jealousy and paranoia.
Absolutely.
Ollie's actions were driven by that need to control Anna, to punish her for what he thought was a betrayal.
Right. And this leads us to the horrible events that happen inside that apartment. Ollie goes in, confronts Anna and Rayburn, and in a fit of rage, shoots them both.
It's hard to even imagine the level of violence that took place in those last moments.
It is.
And during the trial, Ollie tried to portray himself as, a troubled but loving husband who was just pushed to a breaking point.
His lawyers argued that it wasn't premeditated, that he wasn't thinking clearly because of the cocaine and the emotional stress of the situation.
Right.
They tried to say it was a crime of passion, a jealous husband reacting in the heat of the moment.
But the prosecution had a very different story.
They said, no, this was premeditated murder, and they had the evidence to back it up. Ollie was carrying a gun. He had secretly made a copy of the apartment key.
Oh, wow.
And maybe most damningly, his actions right after the shooting, calling his mother, picking his daughter up from school, it all pointed to a level of planning that contradicted his claims that he just snapped.
So let's get into Ollie's testimony. What did he actually say happened inside that apartment?
Well, his account of what happened is chilling and revealing. He says he walked in and saw Anna and Rayburn cuddling on the couch, which to him confirmed all his suspicions.
Right.
He talks about using cocaine to get in the zone and how seeing them together just pushed him over the edge.
And it's important to remember that while he claims he blacked out, he does recall some very specific details. He remembers taking out the gun, he remembers ragging it even though there was already a bullet in the chamber, and he remembers the sound of the gunshots.
And those details, especially racking the gun, become really important in the trial. The prosecution argues that this was deliberate a way to intimidate Anna and Rayburn in their final moments.
Yeah.
Remember, Ollie was in the military. He knew how to use a gun. This wasn't some random act of violence. It was calculated and cold-blooded.
So what about Anna? Did she try to fight back?
Well, there's no evidence of a struggle, but according to Ollie, when Anna saw the gun, she put her hands up and screamed. He shot Rayburn first, and then turned the gun on Anna, shooting her in the forehead. And what's really disturbing is that right before he shot Anna, he apparently said the word respect.
Wow, that one word caught on the recording speaks volumes about what was going on in Ollie's head.
Yeah.
It suggests that in his mind, Anna leaving him spending time with another man was some kind of disrespect that justified his violence.
Exactly. This highlights a dangerous and disturbing pattern that we often see in domestic violence cases, this sense of ownership and control over a partner where any perceived transgression, even if it's imagined, is seen as a threat that needs to be punished.
So after the shooting, what does Ollie do?
His actions right after are both chilling and strange. He calls his mother and tells her what he did. Then he goes to pick up his daughter from school like nothing happened. It's like he was in denial, unable to really understand the enormity of what he'd done.
And this detachment continues during his trial.
Oh, absolutely. The courtroom becomes another stage for Ollie.
Wow.
He tries to manipulate everyone and play the victim. His testimony is like a performance going back and forth between remorse and rage.
Right.
He admits to being violent, but then tries to blame Anna, claiming that her actions and his drug use made him do it.
But his attempts to control the narrative fail in the end.
They do. The prosecution is really good. They expose the holes in his story. They point out his manipulative behavior and his history of violence. They use the recordings that Ollie himself made to tear apart his defense piece by piece.
That's amazing.
They highlight his lies about infidelity, his obsessive need to control Anna, and even his internet searches for escorts while he was saying he was madly in love with his wife.
And what about that moment in the trial when Ollie completely loses it after hearing evidence of Anna's supposed infidelity?
Yeah, that outburst where he yells at the judge and says his life is ruined, that was a huge turning point.
Yeah.
It showed that even with all the evidence against him, he was more worried about his own image and his own pain than with the fact that he had taken 2 lives. He was focused on how this affected him, not on the people he had killed.
In the end, the man who so desperately wanted online fame and attention ended up with a very different kind of notoriety. His story became a warning, a dark example of what can happen with social media and the terrible consequences of unchecked jealousy and violence.
It leaves us with a really profound question. What happens when the persona we create online consumes us? What happens when our need for validation and control overpowers our empathy and compassion?
This whole case is so disturbing. I just
Mhm.
keep thinking about Anna's daughter, Amamira, who's being raised by Ali's parents now.
Mhm.
It's just awful to think about what she's been through, losing both her parents like that.
This case really makes you think about those warning signs of toxic relationships, both online and offline.
Yeah,
It's easy to get caught up in that perfect world of social media, but we got to remember the potential for abuse and manipulation that can hide behind those carefully constructed facades.
you're so right. This case just screams red flags. The controlling behavior, the verbal abuse, the crazy jealousy, the drugs and alcohol. It all points to something being seriously wrong.
And it's important to remember that abuse isn't always physical.
Hmm.
Emotional abuse, manipulation, isolating someone, controlling their finances. Those are all tactics that abusers use to gain power and control over their partners.
So what can we do?
Mhm.
How can we help someone who might be trapped in a relationship like that?
Well, first of all, believe them. Listen to them without judgment and offer your support. Let them know they're not alone and that there are resources out there to help.
And you mentioned resources earlier. Can you remind us what some of those are?
Absolutely. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is a great place to start. They offer confidential support, crisis intervention, and they can connect you with local resources. Their website is thehotline.org, and you can call them at 1-800-799-SAFE-E. That's 7233.
That's good to know. I can feel so helpless when we see these tragedies happen, but knowing there are resources, knowing we can do something is empowering.
We all have a responsibility to look out for each other, to be aware of the signs of illness, and to speak up when something isn't right. Maybe by talking about it, by shining a light on these tough subjects, we can prevent more tragedies from happening.
It's heavy stuff, but so important. If this deep dive has made you want to learn more about domestic violence, please check out those resources we talked about and keep learning. And for more insightful looks into complex topics like this, make sure you subscribe to The Deep Dive. We'll be back soon with another thought-provoking case that'll challenge your assumptions and make you see the world differently. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.